All right, we are live.
Cool.
Hello, everybody watching our video here. You might know me, you might not know me. If you're watching this on social media, you obviously do. My name's Leaf Colt. Have a couple friends that I want to sit down and have a chat with today. We got Phil Davey here and Ryan Flynn. We are not sure what exactly this is going to be. You might have heard some of the previous work we've done in the past. Phil and I had a podcast called One Thing Straight. Ryan actually was a guest on there I think you guested on there just once, right, Ryan?
Once in your place, and then I was briefly on there at the bar that one time.
It felt like it was much more.
Yeah.
It just feels that way, though.
So we had a good session.
Yeah. Obviously, we are looking for ways to keep ourselves occupied. And I think all three of us generally have a feeling like we want to try and influence in some small way what's going on around us. Obviously, things are probably the craziest they've been in a long time, not just in America, but around the world. And I know specifically with you, Ryan, I have had a lot of conversations about kind of like this feeling of helplessness that we have. You know, we're both fairly educated people who like to share our thoughts and hear other people's thoughts and spread information around. But especially recently, it's felt really overwhelming, I know, at least for myself. And so what we're trying to do today is we're not sure really where this is going to evolve or head, but we're going to have a conversation and shoot the shit here for probably about an hour. And just touch on a lot of different topics, and hopefully some of you guys out there can find some value in this. And if we do get enough of a response from an audience out there, we will keep building on this platform, put some more polish into it, start taking user questions, and just trying to make an actual show out of it. So
Sure, some of our old One Thing Straight fans will want to tune in.
Yeah. I think, we had talked about going under the Reason is Rising moniker for this. So for right now, we're going to call this Reason is Rising episode number 1.
Sounds good.
So how are you guys holding up right now? Everyone's broadcasting from their houses. What's your guys' status?
I want to say that if you would have told me, months ago that I would be getting paid to stay home and not go to my job, that it would have felt like a dream come true. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. I can focus my energies into things that I find more productive if it weren't for the need to make money. You know what I mean? And but this is really bizarre, isn't it? Like, this is not the ideal situation, even for someone with a poor work ethic like myself. So it's kind of scary, and you go through waves. I think you go through like scary times, and then relax and chill out times, and then the anxiety might come back a little bit again if you got to go run to the store. I've seen that meme where it's that girl Katniss from the Hunger Games. Like, it kind of feels like that. It's like, I'll be back in a half hour. Wish me luck, So it's very bizarre, very interesting, on a day-to-day basis. I try to not be overly paranoid about certain things, but at the same time, I'm trying to be responsible. So it's a fine line to walk, I guess.
My biggest problem has been not touching my face.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. With the beard, because normally for me to think and process, I have to stroke my beard. And I actually cut about half of it off so that, it's less tempting. But outside of that, it's been, I was just having a conversation with your wife before the show, and we were talking about the onset of anxiety and how it affects us and how we deal with it. And I think I shared with her that normally I'm not an anxious guy, but my life partner, Janelle, my wife, has dealt with it. And so it's like having a seasoned vet there with you to kind of walk you through. Just a couple of nights ago, I had experienced this wave of uncontrollable anxiety that normally I would just kind of, hey, knock it off and just deal with it. But I had no control of it. And that's that vicious cycle of anxiety, if I'm not mistaken, where you feel as if you're out of control and you don't have control, and your heart's racing, your mind's racing. And she sat down next to me and said, okay, listen, you need to find 5 things in the room, concentrate on them. And identify what they are and verbalize them, and just it brings you back home. It lets you know that you are current, your status is here, you're alive, so you can contend with this. And so it was kind of nice having somebody there that has gone through that. But what I couldn't imagine is being alone and dealing with this. And there are millions and millions of Americans that are in this fog of despair, like we all are. It's all the same fog. And they don't have a sounding board, other than maybe a digital way to express it. But just the actual physical companionship of having somebody there with us, what they're all, the three of us are lucky enough to have. So my heart goes out to those that are suffering anxiety and just even being alone, even loneliness can compound that. I mean, I'm no doctor. I've never even played one on TV, but I'm willing to espouse what I know. And what I know is that all three of us are lucky enough to have people at home to help us through this together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a huge thing, that you hit on there, Phil, is anxiety is one of those things that if you aren't used to having it, it's terrifying when you actually get it. And in your situation, you are really lucky that you're living with someone who, in essence, feels that way all of the time. I myself, I have my anxiety. I would put myself into the same category as Janelle, where everything I do gives me anxiety. Like, I was fine, relaxed, hanging around the house. The second I know we're supposed to do our video conference and record all this today, my heartbeat goes up. I'm sitting here right now and like my body's just like, ah! And it's of no control. And I really think a lot of what makes anxiety difficult to deal with for someone who doesn't have it is that loss of control. People are so used to, and especially in America, we are so used to feeling in control all the time. And if we have a problem, having a solution right there to touch, like, oh, that's how I fix this problem. And then you move on. Where anxiety, not only does it give you a loss of control, you can't control your feelings, you might not be able to control your heartbeat, but a loss of control can also cause anxiety. And so a lot of people, almost none of us have control of what's going on right now. We can control what's in our own little bubble and our own actions, but we aren't able to control how the government is, my own job has been closed down. We're being told we can't go certain places. Our finances are up in the air. We don't know if it's safe to go get groceries. And when we do, it feels so scary. And all of that is because of that loss of control. So that triggers this anxiety in some people. And then when they feel that, they're like, oh gosh, now I feel even more out of control because I can't even control my own feelings anymore.
Snowballs.
So it's definitely a difficult thing. One of the cool things that I have told myself, and I didn't really want to talk too much about anxiety and depression on this one. I think that might be something for another episode later. But I think a really cool way to look at it is to remember that there's a reason why we have anxiety. If you talk to a lot of scientists and anthropologists, biologists, things like that, they'll take you way back to when, and obviously it goes back further than this, but they'll cite to when humans first separated from our primate ancestors. Before that, we lived mostly in the trees. It was safe up there. We didn't have to be running around down on the ground with all these predators. It was a much more calm life. And then when we, for whatever reason, came down out of the trees and onto the savannas and plains, there was a lot more things we had to deal with, a lot more dangers hiding in those bushes. And so our bodies evolved this very, very keen emotion of anxiety. And if we had it before, it probably got amplified. So that when we saw that bush shake, we got scared. Or so when we saw a pathway that might lead somewhere shady, we had that feeling. And that feeling is what kept us alive. It's what allowed us to succeed as a squishy, pink, defenseless creature amongst all these predators. And if you subscribe to evolution and how creatures mutate and evolve over time, things don't just go away. It isn't like, okay, humans are now farmers and hunter-gatherers, so we don't need anxiety anymore. Evolve it out of them. Mm-hmm. That stuff takes thousands and thousands of years. And so what we feel today is a residual of that primal healthy fear, that anxiety. That still exists in us. But because of the world we live in, we don't have a lot of things that we need to really worry about. Yes, there's crime. Yes, there are bad humans out there. Yes, there's stuff to worry about. But really, compared to how dangerous life used to be, we have it damn easy right now.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't have anything for that anxiety to be used on. And so that's why now someone like myself, knowing that I'm gonna have to go and have a conversation, or knowing that I have to video conference with two people I know so well, it triggers that anxiety, because that anxiety needs that release. So the way I have tried to, especially in the last year or two, really kind of deal with my anxiety, or at least one of the things that helps, is remembering that there is a reason for why we feel that. And, again, we're talking about that loss of control. There is a reason of why that anxiety is there. And so every time I get some anxiety, I'm like, this isn't something to fight or push back. This is a natural part of my body and my brain's defense system. And in a way, it's a badge of honor, because every time you feel that anxiety, you can hearken all the way back to when the humans came out of those trees and be like, well, guess what? This feels scary, but this is one of the things that made us so successful as a species. So it feels weird because of the world we live in, but if you can really look at it that way, it kind of like makes it seem like there's a reason to feel that way.
So we've developed mechanisms to contend with the anxiety as it washes over us. Let's talk about some of the mechanisms that we individually have that we deal with. More recently, I've gotten into yoga, and I'll tell you what, it's a combination of physical and mental. It's one of the most balanced practices that I've ever been involved in. And so when I'm practicing it, my mind goes somewhere that doesn't allow my mind to be anywhere else, because I'm trying to sync my mind with my body. And going through these motions, it forces you to breathe correctly, and it zeroes my mind. So that's a positive way, right? Of a mechanism to contend with the anxiety and anxiousness that we're experiencing at this level right now. There's plenty of negative ones that we contend with too, right? Not saying this is a negative thing because it pays my bills, but right, and there's another one. So it's, I even hate to put that moniker negative or positive on either one of these, because there are downsides to both. But more of a downside to this, I would imagine. So it's a matter of just of balance. It's as it applies to our lives, and taking these mechanisms and plugging them in when we need them most. And I can attest, I need some mechanisms in my life right now, because things are not normal.
I think, sorry, Ryan, I think one of the things that is important to remember is that you were kind of talking about the value of like, oh, here's my beer. This is a little bit more dangerous of something to deal with than yoga. When it comes to anxiety and depression and really any kind of mental battle, I think you can boil it down, like take beer, yoga, anything. They're all a distraction, or all an escapism. So yeah, they would all have their own ups and downs. I think the most danger is in relying too much on that escapism, because a lot of times what happens is you might be doing that. I'm doing yoga every day, 3 or 4 hours. And then I go home and I have this other project I work on. And then I have this other thing that I work on. And you're feeling good. You're not thinking about your anxiety. And then you stop doing that for 10 minutes. And then all of a sudden that anxiety is still there. It still is existing. So yeah, definitely drinking is definitely going to have more of a downside probably than yoga. But I think there's always a danger in over escapism and relying on that too much and just distracting yourself and then being like, yeah, everything's fine because I feel fine. I think that's a little bit of a facade.
Yeah. I didn't really have anything in particular to say. I was just thinking like, I'm not someone that typically deals with anxiety, depression in the way that people obviously clinically diagnosed with it deal with it. But it's funny when sometimes I'll be like, because, when you try to moderate the drinking and you're like, oh, it's causing me problems, I'm going to quit for a while. I'm going to feel good. I'm going to get my energy levels back and stuff like that. So you make a plan. And then all of a sudden, something scares you. So, like lately with the crisis. As soon as I found out that my work was going to be shut down for 3 weeks, my plan to stop drinking, all of a sudden I have this drive. It's like, it felt like a post-apocalyptic end of the world kind of time. Why wouldn't I have a drink right now? I need to calm my nerves. So it's like that feeling in your plan, it can be very fleeting. You can have like good reasons 1 minute, and then all of a sudden something pops up out of your control and you feel like you need to react differently with it, you know? So it's just kind of interesting, that ebb and flow and stuff as it relates to anxiety and outside factors you can't control.
Absolutely. Before this, before we started going live here, we were chatting with your wife a little bit, and she was talking about how she had some pretty severe anxiety lately, as all of us have. That's something that has been kind of my biggest challenge. A lot of my friends, a lot of family and stuff are like, "Oh, how's everything going?" I'm like, all things considered, it's going pretty well. My biggest battle is keeping my wife calm. Are you guys finding that? And Ryan, with your wife having, kind of stronger anxiety, both you guys have wives right now who are dealing with that. How are you guys, are you dealing with that much? Are you finding yourself trying to ease that anxiety for them? And how are you doing that?
Yeah, I don't really know. None of us seem to really exude, and neither of us seem to really exude a whole lot of anxiety. We don't wear it on our sleeves or anything, but like she was saying, she couldn't go to sleep at all last night. So it might just come in a more subtle, but equally as, problematic, kind of a form. She might not be in like a panic attack, but I'd be lying if I said that we aren't concerned about the future. And she's still working 2 days a week doing an essential emergency services at a dental office. And so it's fine when she came back and she finished her last night last week and she's got like 5 days off. That probably helps ease the mind. And now she's going back to work again tomorrow. And all of a sudden she can't sleep last night. So we don't look like we're panicked, but it's clearly there. There's no doubt. And this is a very surreal, unique, I think, feeling that we're both kind of just figuring out as we go on a day-to-day basis.
On that note, what's more healthy, right? I mean, none of us are doctors, but this is all irresponsible speculation.
I read the internet.
Yeah, well, then there you go. But what's more healthy is identifying that you've got anxiety and anxiousness about a certain situation and stuffing it down and not presenting a facade, or presenting a facade that everything's okay. It reminds me of a commercial that I saw, and I think it was about anxiety control medication, where these people are carrying it's a paper plate with the smiley face on it, and they're holding it up in front of their face. And behind that is a sad face, on their actual physical body. So, is it more of a manifestation of contending with these anxiety levels and stuffing it down and putting out a facade? Is that healthier? Or is letting everybody know that you're fucking anxious? God damn it. I'm having a hard time dealing with this. What's healthier, on you or the people that are around you? I would rather that if my wife is having anxiety, she's not afraid to tell me. And she'll say, "Oh my God, I'm having a hard time." And how I deal with it is I don't have the words, right? Because I haven't experienced it as much as she has. I can't tell her. I can't walk her through it like she does me. So, I rub her head. I rub my fingers through her head. I give her a massage. We turn off the TV. We put on some music, some Sade, something chill,
Music, I think, could be big.
Do physical things that alter the environment and hopefully lower that level of stress, therefore lower the anxiety.
Absolutely. For me, at least, one of the hardest things, so you guys are the two without anxiety in your relationships. For me, with my wife and myself, she's definitely the one. She has not had a lick of depression in her life. She has her ups and downs, but so I'm definitely the one who needs salving in our relationship. And a lot of times, I think for two reasons, words just don't help. And reason one is that, like, if you're really in the grips of like some severe anxiety, and even more so, especially with depression, no words mean anything. depression and anxiety a lot of times don't have a reason. There's no reason there. So you can't use words to reason your way out of it or to make someone feel a certain way. Never once in my entire life, 30 plus years of having these issues, has someone said something to me when I was actually in that mood and then had the switch flip and been like, oh, okay, you're right. Never. Yeah. And then again, it's also the second reason is because it's hard for those people to find those words. I don't know how it is for you guys, but I know for my wife to actually understand what my feeling and actual thought process is, and then to try and talk on that subject is incredibly difficult. Describe something you have never experienced before. Incredibly difficult. And yeah. So for me, that physical thing, how you're soothing your wife, Phil, is the thing. Music definitely does it, but if we're talking human to human, that's what will do it. No words can help. It really just takes like a really nice hug. Stroking my head is nice. BJs are awesome. That stuff will just completely changes my mood. Completely changes. You look like you've never heard of a BJ before.
I'm not. Well, no, just don't come to me if you're stressed out.
We're talking real here. And it's funny. Like I am a very, very simple animal, and maybe my depression and stuff is related to testosterone and stuff. But if I'm being very, very blunt, if I'm having sex like every single day or once or twice a week, pretty regularly, whatever, I'm going to be a little bit less depressed. I'm going to have a little less anxiety. If it's been a lot longer, I'm way moodier, and I'm not speaking for everyone. This is just me. Mm-hmm. So really that physical aspect and that soothing aspect is one of the best medicines for if you're out there, anyone watching, and you have someone in your house who has depression or anxiety. It doesn't have to be sexual. It can just be stroking someone's head, a back massage, holding their hand. That stuff really makes a big difference when nothing matters. To have someone reach out can mean everything, So
yeah, I think it all boils down to distraction and to kind of like focus your mind on something other than the anxiety. And I think, like mindfulness, meditation, just kind of awareness that can help. If you're focusing and channeling all your energy into that song or something else, that'll take your mind off of the walking through a COVID-19 cloud at the grocery store. You know what I mean? Like so much of that is if you pinch your hand or you hurt your hand, all of a sudden you're focused on that and you're not thinking about the other stuff. I think that's a lot of those things, and whatever seems to captivate that person the best, that's probably one of the better salves they can find to alleviate that stress. But
yeah. The other thing you mentioned was music, and like all the physical stuff is good, but I have never experienced anything in my life that can change my mood on a dime like music. And not just from a depressed or an anxiety state to something else, but from a tired to an energized state, or from a pessimistic state to an optimistic state. Like certain songs, they just, there's that nerve, how when people hear music and like some of them will shiver, it will give you like a little thing. That's an actual like nerve reaction in your body. And people who are more susceptible to that have like I'm not sure if it's because your nerve is bigger or you just have more of a reaction. But when I hear music and it changes my mood, I can like feel it start in my chest and my back and work its way up my spine into my head and then like just take me over. And it's the best thing. What kind of music are you guys using to soothe over there? You said some Sade. Was that
yeah,
real?
well, I've got a. It's not a diversion. It's actually on subject here. You talked about the ability for music to change your psyche almost immediately. Just this morning, I left the house for the first time in a few days to go get a solo round of disc golf in at my local course, and I prepared myself for it. I thought, okay, if I see people, I'll just steer clear and bring my headphones and my phone and just dial it in and have a great solo round of disc golf. And as I rolled into the parking lot, I saw it looked like there's a fucking concert going on. There are cars everywhere, people milling about. They all had the same idea I did, right?
Yeah.
There were large groups of people playing together, and and out frolicking, and all this frivolity all of a sudden put me into a shitty mood. So I was pissed, right? As I'm pulling in, within seconds, I went from zen to pissed. And then as I got out of my car and I was looking for an opportunity to slide in on the course somewhere where I wasn't around people, more people came in. So my anxiety kicked, right? Because here I am. I have asthma. I'm over 50, so I'm susceptible to this, right? And I know that. That's why I've been on lockdown. Mm-hmm. And so I went from being very upset to now my anxiety is kicking in. So I'm trying to find these 5 objects I can look at, trying to plug in this tool that my wife, the brand new tool she gave me to work with. And then I found a spot, and I put my headphones on, and I put on St. Paul, which is this amazing blues artist, St. Paul and the Broken Bones, and that music with the horn sections and that old soulful voice and that Motown just kind of kicked in, and my mind just right back to this level of peace. And I put that disc in my hand and I threw it and started making my way through the course. And within 5 minutes of pulling in, being upset, anxiety through the roof, nervousness to instant calm and groove and positive vibe. And that was all by this.
Right.
This tool that I have in my hand and on my ears that was able to transport me physically and mentally into a whole new realm. So the power of music is ultimately powerful, and so I think moving forward, it's a tool I'm going to continue to lean on.
Hell yeah.
No. Go ahead.
Hell yeah. Okay, your turn.
I was just going to say, yeah, I'm assuming you're going to keep using this tool. It's not like you're just going to be like, oh yeah, I'm just done with music. Like, I've run into a couple of, like, 1 or 2 of these people through tattooing, clients or people who come in with clients who are like, yeah, I'm just not a music person. Like, I just don't really listen to music. I'm like, really? How is that a thing? You know?
It's hard to wrap your head around. Yeah. You feel like there would be something for everyone. You know, it's kind of hard to fathom. But
I know. You know, it could have something to do with that nerve, you know, or, you know, just like, obviously there's people out there, there's every different kind of brain quirk out there, you know, there's from schizophrenia to someone who doesn't smell or something, you know. So it doesn't surprise me, I guess, that there's people whose maybe brains didn't develop that specific region, or there's another region that's counteracting that's preventing them from some kind of emotional reaction. But man, I would almost give up like my sense of taste or something, you know, which I heard is one of the, like, a severe thing, in order to keep my love of music, just that feeling and that reaction. Like, we talked about it on One Thing Straight, I know, like my borderline orgasmic reaction in the back of a RV on a road trip with my family, headphones on, listening to Nirvana Unplugged. I was like, I don't know what age, like very young teen. And it just was transcendental. It was the closest thing I've had to a religious experience in my life, like borderline out of body. I would never want to give that up for anything, man, at all.
No doubt.
Speaking of distractionary tactics, I just recorded my first song in a while here.
Oh yeah.
So,
awesome. When can we hear it?
I think I'm going to release it. I don't know when this video is going to come out. So if you're listening, don't check the dates, just check the web. Probably tomorrow or the next day. So
okay.
Yeah. I would play it now, but it would probably sound like shit through these speakers, and I'm already my own biggest critic. So if I had to come back and listen to it and it sounded like shit, that's like a double whammy. I'm trying to stay
anxiety all over and over.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we tackled a lot of anxiety, depression. Was there like any other kind of like particular direction you wanted to head this conversation into? Is there some key points that you thought were relevant to the moment that you want to get out?
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, and we kind of talked about this before, that another thing that a lot of people are finding difficult right now, other than any kind of emotional issues or trying to not stay bored, is just trying to stay informed right now.
Oh, yeah.
All 3 of us are pretty into politics, consuming news, debating with friends, getting into deep conversations. We're all who I would like to think are pretty informed. I myself have even been finding it really difficult to not so much find accurate information, because, you know, I definitely kind of will check one article, then check the source, and then check, you know, I'll go a little bit deeper than just a headline or just the surface level article. But getting like up-to-date information. I've had people like message me and then I'll say one thing and then I'll look and then there was a new news story posted just an hour with an update on the situation. So how have you guys been staying informed, and like, have you found any tips or easy ways, and how's it been?
Go ahead, Phil.
You know, I'm pretty open in the way that I get my information. Of course, being a left-leaning liberal, you know, I hate
Snowflake
tags and labels. So, you know, I default towards CNN, MSNBC to find out what's going on. We have our morning routines where we listen for the first hour, we watch for the first hour, our local channel 9 and 10 with the local broadcasters to kind of get the local vibe. And then to get the bigger view, we switch over to CNBC or CNN to find out what's going on a global scale. But I try not to pigeonhole myself. So just to find out what the other side are listening to, I will venture over to Fox, and usually it's more of a sort of a comic relief that kind of gets me by, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, who knows? So depending on the situation, but like I said, I like to be as fair and balanced as possible. No pun intended. In my
funny to me that you say CNN and MSNBC, because I'm pretty liberal, I think, too. But for me, those networks, I used to be a huge CNN guy, like back probably in like the Obama times. But they have too much opinion for me now. Like, I really get the criticism from conservatives that CNN and MSNBC, I don't think they're fake news at all. I think they definitely have more of a spin on their news than other places. Do you feel that way, Ryan? I see you nodding your head, or are you?
Well, yeah, and no, like I still tune into CNN, and you know, like you said, MSNBC a little bit. I pretty much stick to CNN, not because I'm loyal to it. It's just more of a habit, I guess, than anything else. But I get most of my news from my up-to-date news from notifications on my phone through like different apps that I've got on there, you know, and that's the stuff that I kind of keep current with. CNN definitely, you know, has some spin, but I guess I'm used to it. I think I find it easier than maybe a lot of others to parse speculation with real data. And so when I see them kind of given their spin, if someone speculates with a question mark, did Trump mean this? Like, I know to just kind of throw that away. You know, that's just some guy's opinion. So I just try to stick to kind of, I guess, the data, and just out of habit, I keep going back to like the same spot. I do occasionally go over to Fox News with intent of assuming I'll get some kind of comic relief. A couple of weeks ago, I went over to Fox News after watching some CNN. I'm like, let's see what Tucker Carlson's saying. And, you know, obviously CNN, it was all like updates to like the people infected, and there's probably something about Trump on there. But it was dealing largely with the scientific advisory and the coronavirus and what people should be doing and things like that. I go over to Fox News and it's Tucker Carlson, and like within 3 seconds, it's the China virus. I'm like, okay, they're talking about it too, but of course they've got to have that little dig, you know, that conservative dig. So, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't really know what else to say about that, but I don't see, like you said, it's not fake news. I don't see lies. It's just kind of like, take it for what it is. You know, if they're quoting someone, that's a quote, you know, like that's real. If they're showing data, that's real. You know, if they're asking questions about what you think about the president, that's speculation. Just take it for what it is and move on.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed a lot recently is I talk to a lot of people who are like, yeah, I can't watch any mainstream news whatsoever. You know, I try and stay informed through reading or whatever. And I can't watch the news because there's just too much opinion, blah, blah, blah. And I get that. And that's one of the reasons, again, I don't necessarily like to watch CNN or MSNBC. And I also don't like to watch Fox. It's just so much freaking opinion. But losing track of fuck. I think what's important is, so if someone doesn't watch news at all, the things that you can watch are when they interview a senator or a congressman, or when they were airing the impeachment hearings live, or when it's a press conference with Trump or Cuomo or Gretchen Whitmer. Those are words coming directly out of those people's mouths. There is no ability for someone to spin it and reinterpret it and write it in a certain way. Yes, that person who's saying that is obviously giving their own spin, they're telling their own story, but that's as close as you can get to the horse's mouth. So I think it's funny when someone's talking about, you know, how they can't listen to the news, blah, 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 but then they're completely just like out of the loop because they're not even giving themselves that opportunity to sit there and hear it right from the person. Whereas if you're listening to something on Fox or reading an article in the Washington Post, it's someone else's interpretation through at least one level of filtration, if not two or three, interpreting it to their own little bit, a little bit. So if you can parse, and I love how you said that, if you can parse the opinion out of whatever network or whatever article you're reading and seeing, and just try and get to those actual quotes or like the actual numbers, that will get you pretty far. But I also think, you know, watching these press briefings for me has been so informative. It's been really nice. The Como press briefings,
superstar,
really, really calming, or as calming as anything can be nowadays. So I think that's a really, people who just don't watch the news or can't stand the cable news, that's why I would urge them to try and find a network or a website that is posting these actual clips of the actual politicians or scientists or whatever kind of news you're trying to absorb. Find the people who are involved in that story or making that news, and then try and get to that, as opposed to trying to be like, oh, well, I want to find out what's going on with the new stimulus bill, so I'm going to read this article in the USA Today and act like I know what the bill is.
Yeah, one thing I want to say that really kind of annoys me about this, and it's going to give kind of like credit to the major news networks like CNN and even Fox News. They vet their information to a degree that these blog sites clearly do not, you know. So it bugs me when people online will completely dismiss major news media outlets and continue to repost some like baldeaglesforjesus.com meme type of stuff. And like, I see that, I don't know if you have similar friends in your like social media circles, but they'll post something from one of these bad sites and it's false. A lot of people can tell as soon as they read it that it's garbage. And then other friends will weigh in and throw the PolitiFact check, you know, or the Snopes fact check. And these people, the same people that have this major distrust in major news media, are constantly being bombarded with fact check stuff from their friends on all of their posts. It's like, how many times do you have to reference a site that is wrong before you start to realize maybe these major news media networks actually are doing a better job of reporting real news than the sites they keep going to? Well, it bugs the shit on me.
What perpetuates it is this amazing news platform called Facebook. Yeah. Right?
That's what I was thinking.
You know, I see friends of mine or relatives and, you know, people that are Trump leaning post these crazy things that, I mean, all you have to do is read the headline to know it's not right from freedomeagle.gun.com, right?
Right.
We know it's not legitimate, and they do too. But it's this reaction to bolster these things that are espoused by this administration that force them to present the only data that they have. Although it's wrong, it gives them this feeling of, well, I can't legitimately argue against what you're saying, but here's this.
Yeah.
And then that's it. You know, that's the end of the argument. So I think that the less we give that platform legitimacy, the better. You know, I have not reposted anything that I've ever seen, left-leaning or not, that's on Facebook. I just don't do it because, I mean, just yesterday, I was on Facebook rolling through. I work, of course, as you know, in the alcohol industry, and I see an article saying that the governor of Ohio is going to be banning alcohol. I just about shit my pants, and I clicked on it, and it was Rick Astley. I got rickrolled.
Yeah, the same thing just happened. One of Ryan, oh, you know him as well. One of our good friends works at a liquor store, and last night, so yesterday on Facebook, the same article, but for Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer is going to ban all alcohol sales starting Sunday at midnight. This thing was going around, and it had some weird ass fucking link on it, and I didn't even interact or click on it or anything. I was like, that's obviously some wackiness. And Brittany's like, oh, my wife is like, oh, did you read that thing or see that thing? And I'm like, no, like, it seemed weird. She's like, yeah, it's like a complete prank thing. I guess when you opened it up, and again, I didn't open it, it was literally just like, you've been pranked or some shit like that. I don't know.
I legitimately got rickrolled. I clicked on it, never gonna give you up, never gonna let you. I went, oh, god damn.
So anyway, that night, my buddy was working at the liquor store, and he's like, dude, what the hell happened to people today? Half of the people coming in are telling me that we're about to be under martial law, and the other half are telling me that as of midnight, we're not going to be selling alcohol anymore. And I'm like, dude, those people are, not that you can censor the customers coming into your store, but those are the people who are just maybe beyond help, because that proves they didn't even click on the headline and they just like assumed that they knew what was going on. You know, they either had it posted to their page on Facebook, or, you know, they whatever, saw it and scrolled through. But there's a difference between reading an article that may be biased or something like that. But even the most factual article in the world is going to have a sensational headline, is going to have some kind of headline that's going to make it maybe seem a certain way. And without clicking on a headline and reading the actual article, so many people make that assumption nowadays that they're now updated on that subject, you know, and like
to espouse it, willing to go out with the bullhorn and let the world know. So what that does for me is that the vehicle, that person that shared that of this information is now discredited in my eyes, because what that tells me is they have no inclination whatsoever to take that information and do a little research on it. One click would let them know that that's an illegitimate article, and yet they espouse it. Yet they spread the word.
I think there's something psychological going on too, where there's like the typical conspiracy theorist, you know, like I have a hard time believing that they all fully believe in stuff. It's more like, and I have no idea how this actually works in the human brain, but it's they hear an idea and it triggers some things. It triggers some dopamine. It makes them like some eureka, you know, like kind of like feeling. And then they would prefer to have that be the reality rather than take the time to like look into it and actually figure out. And they kind of like marry themselves to it to some degree. And then they don't want to be told that they're wrong about it at that point. I think there's something that happens along those lines a lot too with people, where it's not just intellectual laziness, it's not stupidity, it's what's going to captivate their interest, and they want to keep that belief alive if they find it entertaining or interesting in some way.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's a big part of it. You know, there's some people who are posting certain things or whatever because they genuinely believe that those things and that side. But there's like this almost middle group who might lean one way or the other, but they're really posting things just more so to like troll, you know, and just get that emotional release. And maybe not even because they relate with that story, kind of how you were saying, but really they just care about the reaction that goes on around it.
That too.
You know, and like, there's definitely people who are cognizant of that. Like, they're like, I know I'm trolling. This shit's funny as hell. I saw like a Vice or maybe a CBS mini doc about a guy who is on 4chan. He has been ever since he was like a little kid, and he just grows up in this crazy world. He's like, yeah, I post stuff because it's hilarious to see people blow up like this. And that's super dangerous. But then there's also these other people who aren't conscious of that's why they're doing it. Like they just are almost tricked into believing what that meme is or believing that trolley article because they're getting that dopamine release of seeing all that reaction, and they don't even know why they relate to it. They just think they do because they're fooled into like that awesome social response. You know, there's this, obviously I'm not going to call anyone out, and I don't even remember this kid's name, and I don't even know how I was friends with him on Facebook. And you might have seen him because I know that we're related through some of the same friends on there. Just going like down into the super troll videos with like the weird face app filters on, and like just saying the most trolly Trump things, and then just posting like super hardcore day after day. And I had never interacted with him in my feed, but I bet you what happened and the way these algorithms work is that a friend saw one of his videos and then posted something on it like, oh, you shouldn't do that, what the fuck? And then a couple other people we know did. So then it's like, we should populate this into Leaf's feed. So then I see him, and it took like maybe about a week or two of seeing him. And it was just this crescendo. And it would just be a couple posts here or there that would get a big reaction. But then like the rate of his posting went quicker and quicker and quicker. And then the videos got more radical and just more trolly and less even politics based. And you were able to see that evolution of someone growing into this power, like, oh my God, I've never got this much reaction on social media. This is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Someone going off the rails in live time. That's
happening everywhere all the time, you know? So it's like people think the main problem is the divide in America. Oh, we're so polarized. That's maybe part of it, but really our problem is we have like this other third group of people who really don't give a fuck about anything, you know, and are just kind of poking
running around lighting fires, just lighting fires.
Exactly.
We just have so many countless psychological barriers that are keeping truth and well-informed decisions and rational thinking from being more mainstream than it is, you know. And I guess there's not a whole lot we can expect to do about that on a massive scale. You know, you just try to chip away at it here or there, try to promote why it matters to be telling the truth, why it matters to not tell the truth. And hopefully you start bringing some people along, but clearly there are some very natural common aspects of human psychology that are just always going to get in the way of, like I was telling you the other day, like we're in a spot, you can literally show people proof of something. Here's proof. And it can do nothing sometimes to change their mind. You're like, we're talking like empirical evidence doing nothing to sway the opinion. It's like, that described that overwhelming sensation of frustration where I just feel like throwing all the papers up and being like, how do we play this game then? You know, if empirical evidence doesn't even matter, like, what are we doing? Like,
well, yeah. it's a game without rules or without boundaries that we're in right now. And if they can operate within the realm of this game without borders, without bumpers, without rules, then we're left exasperated, and that's where I'm at. I'm done arguing and trying to institute reason where it could be best served. I'm done. I'm just letting it wash over me, and you know, hoping that this year will end and a new one will begin, and you know, to compound it with this COVID thing has been, you know, back to the original discussion, very anxiety ridden.
Yeah. I just want to say real quick, what a year, right? You know, like every New Year's, there's like optimism, and there's, you know, people will also be like, I'm sure some shit will happen. I've been tricked by this before, but you know, maybe this year it'll be different. And right away we get a Kobe Bryant crash. You know, it just shook people around the world. And that was hardly the tip of the iceberg. And we're not even in April yet. I mean, wow.
It's crazy, you know, it's definitely, I think, the tendency of people to always feel like they're living in the end times. You know, it's always craziness is going on, but it is very difficult if you really try and objectively look at things to wonder if this is maybe the craziest they've ever been. We're not in a giant war, so I know that it's probably a very bad comparison. But as far as just socially and with how technology is altering the way in which we communicate and spread ideas and how that's playing into all these different social interactions with people and psychological reactions, it's a wild time, man. You know, like I'm sure you think about this all the time. You've got two kids who are definitely old enough to absorb information, you know, and that's something that I wonder about, you know, if I have a kid growing up in this world, like how do I even teach them to deal with all this, you know? Or is that just me feeling again like, oh, it's the end times, which is just the human condition? Would I just be like going over the edge, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, that'll come and go. Tuesday it'll be the end times, and Wednesday you'll be rocking out to your favorite playlist, right? You know, it's the
Yeah.
ebb and flow.
Or you're going to be rocking out to your favorite playlist to contend with the reality of these end times.
Medicine.
Amen.
Yeah, you'll be using that escapism. How Phil earlier was talking about just letting it wash all over him and just being over it. You know, I know you've communicated, we're in a message group with some of our very close friends, and we'll wake up in the morning and just see messages from each other, and we talk about all this different stuff, which for anyone out there, I would suggest doing it. It's a good way to keep in touch. But the other morning I woke up and Ryan had this post. It was like, he's got kids. He wakes up earlier than me. I'm a tattoo artist. I sleep in. I go and I look at my phone. It's like 7 or 8 a.m., something like that. And it's like this long paragraph about how you're like frustrated with trying to talk to people about a lot of stuff and, you know, like religion and politics, and how you just wanted to like throw those papers up. Like, is that something that, you know, you've had more time to think about? Do you still feel that way, Ryan, right now? Or
Yeah, it ties into what I was just kind of getting at, the overwhelming sense of frustration when especially if you feel like you're doing a good job to articulate your point and you've got the right data to back it up. And I mean, this is a very common feeling for me now, where I'm like, I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to say it in this particular way. And you reread it, you hit send, and you're like, okay, I hope this, you know, gets to people. And then like the first response within minutes is the ignorance that, you know, like makes you want to like rip your hair out, you know? Yeah. So, I mean, again, like all things, that I still find that fleeting. It comes and goes, but it's definitely a big source of my frustration. It doesn't seem to matter how well you can the other thing is just trying to express your point and to make sure that people understand exactly what you're talking about, and to not like assume things that are off of your point, you know? And so you choose your words very carefully, you put it out delicately, and it still does not, people assume things that you never even mentioned in what you wrote, you know? Yeah, I find that very common and very frustrating. But I guess as time goes on, I'm also getting more used to it and accustomed to it. So maybe I won't find it as toxic, you know, as the years go on. But I definitely think about it.
Are you going to start taking the Phil approach and start just kind of letting it wash over you, or are you going to keep doing it? Like, is it worth our time to keep trying to? Because I post a lot of political stuff, especially right now, and I try not to be too much in one direction. I just try and get people to think more, make America think harder, you know, like
Right.
human-based policies. I don't really care exactly, both in the Yang Gang. I don't even care if people believe one way or another. What I care is if people focus on people. I don't care what party you relate with, or specifically what kind of policy tracks or ways you want to get to where you want to go, as long as we're all going to the same place, which is human life is extremely important and is the most precious thing, and freedom and independence and the things that America is built on. Like, that's all I care about. Human-centric thought in all ways, political, religious, you know, anything like that.
I will say real quick that it's on a macro sense, it doesn't seem to do a whole lot of good to like voice your opinion on social media every day. You know, like you're not going to see any type of fulfilling change, you know, in live time or anything like that. But in a micro sense, I think it's actually essential to create that change over time. It might just be we might largely be planting seeds that sprout way later that we'll never be privy of even watching. You know what I mean? But society evolves, the way we think evolves, and that doesn't happen just from people keeping their mouths shut. You know, that happens by voicing opinions. So it matters, but in a micro sense, you know, you're not going to change the world no matter how good you articulate your point, you know, and you have to try to find the balance, I think, with those two aspects of it.
Yeah.
You, Ryan, because I've seen you for years now engage, high level engagement, very well written, very intelligent, very well thought out presentations, you know, stating your point on things, and always very eloquent, very well written and put together. Have you ever gotten that where people said, who normally would be opposed to whatever you're trying to convey, whether it's politics or religion, especially with religion, have you ever had somebody fall away or respond in a way that you wouldn't expect that did?
In a positive sense, you mean? Like, I got to them?
That actually heard what you were saying.
Yeah, I do. And usually that doesn't seem to happen online as much, but with my coworkers in particular, you know, when you have face-to-face conversations and they can see your expressions, your tone, your emotions, they can get a much clearer representation of the message you're trying to convey that way. And I have seen some success that way. I've spoken about a point that a friend had thought was ridiculous and absurd before. And then we go back and forth in live time, and now it makes more sense to them. They might still disagree, but you can tell that they're actually picking some of it up. The idea is no longer insane like they thought it was, you know?
Yeah. I think that's really, you know, part of the reason why we get into so many heated things online is because compared to the person-to-person interaction, you don't get to see the person's face, their body movement. You don't get to hear the tone of their voice. Sarcasm, I have such a problem with people posting things sarcastically, comments on mine. And I've had this happen a couple times recently where I'll post someone and then someone will post something that's sarcastic and then I'll respond as if it was real, take all this time to write a paragraph out. And then they're like, bro, I was joking. And it's like, if I could have heard the tone of their voice,
it would have cleared all that up. Yeah, absolutely. Communicating online is a much worse method of conveying your point and actually getting a genuine conversation to go. Clearly, all those other cues, the visual cues and everything, and the audio cues, they make a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, even...
What emoticons?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, emoticons help, but there you go. I know what Leaf's thinking.
I like it.
Yeah. They help, but it still obviously falls way short of the bar that you need to really get a meaningful conversation through, in most cases anyway.
So do you guys think that, you know, not to give them too much plug in this discussion, but do you think that Facebook will be a better place once it transitions to like fully VR where we can like see each other's faces and we're like visiting each other's? So when you read someone's post, you see them there saying this, or like, do you think that will make it any better that we can have those sarcasm and facial cues and things like that? Or
well,
do you think it's
let
always
me answer that for you. YouTube, right? I mean, there's plenty of conversations like this going on YouTube where you can see people's expression. Are things better there?
I don't think so. Not in the comment section.
Oh, yes, exactly. That's where the trolls belong, down in the basement in the comment section.
Right.
But that's kind of an interesting thing there, because I do think on YouTube, you know, there are definitely a lot of troll videos on YouTube and opinion videos. But again, it's almost like you're taking that, how I was saying earlier, taking those filters out and those middlemen out. Even if you're watching someone on YouTube who's like an opinion journalist, or, you know, whatever videos you're watching on there, that's still that person saying their words. You know, that's... So while there might be trolly videos, I do think it's a little easier. Like, let's say Ryan wanted to go on there and have a video about like religion's influence in politics. And for him to write this long 2-paragraph post on Facebook that's very eloquently done with all the right things to say, people would see that and absorb that one way. But if he were to be able to create a video with him there talking to people, hearing the tone of his voice, seeing his mannerisms, you know, maybe it's not going to be a much better place, but it seems like it would be, I think it's a more effective medium. You know, I mean, that's kind of why we're doing this right now, you know.
Yeah.
And part of my motivation, you know, obviously it's great to talk to you guys no matter what, but part of my motivation to do this is because of what you were saying of like, I can only get so much done online, and I've had more success with talking to people face to face. You know, I don't think I'm trying to, again, make anyone believe in a certain way or think any certain thing. But if we're trying to just communicate ideas with each other and then with anyone who watches this video, this is way more effective than any kind of Facebook or Instagram warrior messaging you can do. You know, like people get
Absolutely.
in our faces, hear our emotion, and you know, so
Part of it too, I think and it almost comes down to an individual level. When people are reading something, people uh, interpret what they're reading in different ways. Some people I've noticed actually, and this is a little more rare, but some people I've noticed actually read words that aren't there, like when they're reading, you know, like, and I'm assuming that when you speak on a video, a lot of that subsides, you know, it's not the same effect, but like people tend to, they, I think what happens is something triggers in their mind where they're like, oh, I know where he's going with this. And then they start like reading those words in their head where they think you're going with something. And even though you never go there, they attack you for it anyway, you know? So it definitely improves. It's not a utopia of communication, you know, through video, but it has to improve at least to a lot of different individuals to communicate that message.
So one of the last things that I wanted to kind of talk about, and this is, I know one of the things that you were most excited to kind of get into, Ryan, and especially talking about trying to talk to people on Facebook nowadays and dealing with the whole COVID shit going on right now. There's so much misinformation, and I'm even guilty of this, trying to like post stuff and act like I know everything, you know, and you know, I'd like to think I do at least a decent halfway educated job of it, but I probably, you know, I'm not any kind of professional, I'm not any kind of, you know, scientist, but you know, there's been a lot of policy decisions and things being made that the influence of why they're making these decisions seems very questionable. And you know, for instance, with how supplies are being rationed out to certain places, or how exemptions are being made for churches right now. At least in Michigan, we're one of the states where churches have an exemption to the meeting limit, which I think our state meeting limit and recommendations is less than 50 people right now. And I'm not sure if it's a federal recommendation or somebody who said you groups of 10 or less.
I think that was the CDC that came out with 10 or less.
Okay. So, but then they can have whatever kind of gathering they want. You know, I think I saw there was a giant church somewhere in the United States that just had like 1,800 people at a giant religious kind of thing going on because there was an exemption in that state. How do you even begin to talk about why these decisions are being made that way? You know, like, do you guys think it's more of a money issue? Do you think it's more of just who's in charge right now? Do you think it's more of like a religious and philosophical issue?
I mean,
I think it's more.
What better example of church and state separation can we utilize here? Why would we have exemptions for church gatherings when they're telling normal human beings to not gather? You know, it's, where is the rationale? Where is the reason in coming to that conclusion? Are people that are religious exempt from this? Are they immune to COVID? I don't think so. So where does that come from? What is the impetus for that? Is it because we were born, or the U.S. was established as a Christian nation, or what is it? You know, that's what we should delve down into. Where does the impetus? Where does who thought of this and why?
Well, I think it's very unique, specifically with religion. When you're talking about a worldview of the righteous and the protected, and if you walk the correct path, you will be rewarded. And these types of things all stem off in so many different directions. And yet, like the one of the major mega churches, like I've seen some of the rhetoric of preachers, pastors, priests that have that. Do you think God would let that virus in our establishment, and attack our congregation? And there are a lot of people, depending on your worldview, will actually buy into that. They're like, no, of course he wouldn't. He's going to protect us, and in fact, going into a higher risk area in a different way will help prove your devotion to him. It's almost like a judgment. It's a trial. You're like, look, I totally believe, don't forget to reward me later, because I have all the confidence that you will protect me. And not everyone goes that far. I understand that. We're talking about like maybe a minority of religious people. I don't know if it's minority or majority, but that's certainly a major factor with COVID-19 and religion and religious exemption, and just the privilege that religion has in this country is enabling these people to do that and to think that way and to spread that message. And we're all influential. I mean, we all can be steered one way or another, and you've got leaders in the pulpit that are steering people into that. And some of it just depends on who their leader is and the types of things they're saying. They'll follow them off the edge of a cliff, so to speak. And so, yeah, I think that's a major part of it.
Lemmings can't get COVID.
What?
Lemmings can't get COVID.
Just walk off a cliff. That is one thing I will definitely say. I haven't been driving around too much, but I know a lot of people in Traverse City and here in Michigan and stuff that go to churches whose churches have proactively decided to shut down, because it's the right thing to do. So I have to definitely applaud. There's a lot of churches that have voluntarily, and I'm sure, mosques and other religious places that have shut down of their own accord. So, I do have to give them kudos for that. However, especially me coming from an industry that was specifically told, tattooing is one of the few industries in Michigan that was specifically named out to close. Everything else was just closed in the third wave of closings where they're like, oh, if it's non-essential, you have to close. But we were specifically closed in like the second wave. So they closed no more serving at restaurants and stuff. So all the service industry got decimated first and specifically targeted. Then tattooing, salons, person-to-person nail places were all specifically named. And then after that, it's like, okay, non-essential, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So to see all of these exemptions, the list, and specifically in Michigan, to see all of the exemptions, it's a lot of stuff. If anyone, you can go to michigan.gov and look at the specific bill there, and it has all of them, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. I don't know how far down it goes. It's crazy to see all these exemptions. And then to know that there's a lot of opinion things that are still left open, that's where I would put church and religion, is that I agree it's a lifestyle and it's something someone fully believes in, a faith, but it's still something that is like an opinion. So to allow that to be an exemption and to say it's essential when like my job, my career, what I do, the factual thing, like I could quit and do another job, but this is like what I have everything invested into, to have that specific kicked out and then to have an opinion thing be allowed to exist has been incredibly frustrating for me.
It's easy for you to come to that conclusion, to know within yourself that what they're abiding by is opinion based, but to them it's not. Right? I mean, to them it's real. This is real. God will protect us from COVID. And that's the scary part.
And even when they have proof that it doesn't work, like I've seen a pastor who was like alt-right kind of views that called this a hoax against the president. He went on a mission trip somewhere overseas and came back, and he's dead now. And I'm quite confident, I have no idea for sure, but I'm quite confident that a lot of people in his area that know him, that know that story, still think that they will be protected. Like even when they see it work against them and they see, well, it might not necessarily be the case, then they can always chalk it up to thy will be done, I guess, or something along those lines, you know.
Yeah,
The level of mental gymnastics it takes to get to that realization is Olympic level.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is.
that's one of the things that that I don't like, that I look at as like a negative of people who use religion. Like, I think the main positive thing is it does so much good for them, and it's nice in a situation that we have right now where everyone's scared and afraid to have that God has a plan for me, or you know, I'll be taken care of, or I've lived my life in a certain way, so if something did happen, I would be taken care of. That is nice. I'm glad people have that solace and that feeling and that release. For someone like myself who is, you know, doesn't necessarily believe in a God, you know, I'm pretty much what I would say a borderline or full-fledged atheist with like a door open kind of thing. Um, I don't have that. And so it's a very scary thing to come to terms and grapple with. So it's nice that they have that. But that exact same thing, that God has a plan, so it makes me feel good, also allows them to slip into this denial or even a sense of apathy of what's happening to everybody else and the people around them, because they think it's God's will, it's God's plan. So they don't have to worry about this other stuff out here so much, or worry about like necessarily like the facts or looking into something, because it doesn't matter. God has a plan, right? And
Right.
so
And not
that
only do they not have to worry about it, they don't have to think about it. You know, it literally like dulls the senses and ability to think about these things for a lot of those people when they know largely it's all taken care of for them. You know, how critical and what type of deep dive do you need to do on something when it's all taken care of for you? And you just have this underlying trust, you know, like it definitely affects a lot of people that way.
What level of trust are we talking about here? Let's look at this. So
Yeah.
do you honestly think that the people that are buying into the system and believe that their almighty God will be protecting them from this horrible virus, and they go on Sunday and they hear the message and they get hyped up about it, and then they go home and they have a cigarette and they have a bourbon and they beat their wife, and then the realization starts setting in, right? The realization starts setting, well, maybe he doesn't, and then they don't go out, right? Because they're told to stay at home, and then they don't interact, and then they don't do all the things that the CDC, the science-based fact machine, is espousing. Do we really believe that they really believe that this is reality, that they are protected based on their actions? I say no.
Yeah. Well, it's everything. Some of them really do believe. Some, I'm sure of that. Some of them are in this constant battle. How much, you know, it will worry them in the back of their mind to suggest there's doubt, but at the same time they tell themselves otherwise, you know, and they're kind of like tiptoeing, they're like on the fence about it. And then other people just maybe pretend in front of their peers in their community, you know, when they're alone in their own thoughts, they might have a differing opinion on it. I don't know how to do the pie chart and assign the percentages of who, you know, what. I really have no idea, but it's definitely very varied across the board. I'm sure you get every situation you could think of going on in the mind of a believer, and it's out there, you know.
yeah, people have a lot of different motivations for things, you know, and again, it goes to why we do anything, why we would believe in a religion, why we would post an article that might be trolly, you know, like there's just so many different varying. You can't just be like, well, yeah, I wholeheartedly trust that they fully believe this. You know, what I would have to say, and this is to like, I guess anyone who's more in the middle of any viewpoint, but specifically with like this kind of religious and COVID type stuff. If you fully believe in it and you fully believe that, you know, or we should be able to trust that you fully believe, that's fine, that's cool. But if you are one of the other kind of variances that you were just talking about, where you feel socially pressured into it, or it's been the story you've always been told, and it's what your parents did, so it's what you did, it's what their parents did, it's what you always do. um, there's a lot of stuff that I view to be very socially like, holy cow, like, why are you treating people that way?
Mm-hmm.
That if I am giving you this trust and you don't actually believe that, and you're still going along with some of these policies, you know, like immigration, women's right to choose, how resources are being distributed through the COVID epidemic, if you shouldn't be fully trusted and you're still going along with that, that's where serious questioning needs to come into people's minds. The difficult thing is, if you are one of those people, hearing me say that to you doesn't make it any easier for you to defy the story, your reality that you've been told your entire life. So
Right.
how are those people reached? You know, and is it the responsibility of content creators and people like us to try and reach them? Is it only something they can attain through themselves? You know, or is it a moot point?
Yes. All the above. Some people can be persuaded. Some people, it takes a crazy amount of time to persuade them. Others will never be persuaded. Yes to everything, you know.
So much yes.
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, I think we covered all the topics we had planned on talking about, and I think that was somewhere around an hour or so.
Okay.
So I think we'll wrap up this conversation. And you know, is there anything you guys want to leave anyone watching this video with who's managed to stick with us the whole time? Any parting thoughts? If it will be a while until we talk to them.
I just want to say that I find the timing not interesting, almost more entertaining. That the first time someone in our lifetime champions the idea of UBI as a major policy in their flagship proposal, it's funny that so many people like laughed off the idea, and it was such an insane, crazy, far-fetched out there idea. It's all the different things you've heard people criticize it for. And then think about what it would have meant to have that before, during, and after this whole crisis, and the type of change that might have been able to provide for people. It's crazy that we're hit with a global pandemic where we're doing exactly that. And one of the major arguments was, where are we going to get the money? Where are we going to get the money? Look, we've got the money. Like, when we need it, it's there. You know, they just write checks. That's how it works. You know, like, we build up a deficit and we try to find some way to pay it back. But I find it really interesting that Andrew Yang champions these ideas, gets laughed off by who knows how many people. And now it was probably the best possible idea that anyone could have had to help us transition through this process. And now we're waiting weeks for the politicians to argue over giving us money and how much that money is going to be. So I just want to throw that out there. It's very interesting timing that all that would come together like that.
I think the $1,200 figure is very telling, because Trump always likes to up everybody. And so if it was $1,000 from Yang, it's $1,200 from the Trumpster.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, right. Except in other countries, they're getting like 75% or more of their income, or like $8,000. Like, look around at what the other countries have done. I think it's very telling in American that we have some of the slimmest packages. We also have some of the slimmest healthcare. So, you know, Phil, did you have a separate final thought or anything you wanted to leave people with?
No, just gonna, do what I'm gonna do, and make sure.
We're gonna be so bored after this is done. You're gonna be like, can we do another one tomorrow? Okay, well, you know, my final thought, you know, I definitely think politically there's a lot of things that I
can't turn it off.
I know. But I just really want, you know, if you're listening and watching, you know, I want you to like stay super positive. You know, everybody is pretty much in the same boat, even if you're not someone whose job has been canceled or you've been laid off, who's having to stay at home, or, you know, wherever you're falling into the spectrum, there's people still going out to work and having to deal with the anxiety of just being out there. Just remember that we're all in this together right now. Like, everybody is feeling the exact same way. So, you know, just focus on your neighbor. And even with myself, with the politics and stuff, I just try and remember that there are humans in every single spot and every single side. And the biggest thing that I hope that comes out of this, you know, obviously I hope the world comes together and people get better, blah, 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 you know, which I think humans are humans. Who knows if that's going to happen? But specifically in America, I think that this is a really good opportunity for people to look at our healthcare system. Right now, they're so overstressed. The people working in the hospitals are heroes and putting themselves in the line of fire, especially where we are in a more rural area. I can only imagine how under-resourced the hospitals might be.
Mm-hmm.
I've, you know, my college, my alma mater up in Marquette, Northern Michigan University, the art program actually came to there and is like 3D printing masks, safety masks to give to the hospital there. I think they've done like over 30 masks that they've made now. People are really kind of coming together. But if we had a healthcare system that was really human based and serving everybody and that everybody had access to, the issues wouldn't be as serious as they are right now. And they wouldn't be having to go through this. And I think we would have more accurate numbers. We would probably have more testing. Someone like myself, I don't have health insurance, so I would probably have access to the healthcare system. So I think that's realistic, that after this, people really are like, holy cow, that was crazy. And this was overstressed. And I think right now, a lot of people are looking at it. I don't know if it's going to change how people vote in the upcoming election. You know, Bernie's offering Medicare for all. Biden is kind of like, keep it like it is. You know, I don't know if that's going to influence how people vote, but no matter what happens there, I hope that the healthcare industry gets a close look at how we can make it work better for the people in it and for all three of us in this conversation and all 13 of you who watched this video.
13. Wow. I was going to joke about 2 earlier.
Yeah.
You know, at least all of your wife will probably, you know, they'll at least give it 1 view. Yeah. That's at least 3 views.
I'll make them watch.
Yeah. I guess the point I was trying to make with the whole Elvis thing and the laugh track is how I contend with all of this is keep your sense of humor, man. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of people ditch the sense of humor first because they feel as if everything needs to be so fucking serious. You know, if you can't laugh about some of the things that we're seeing right now, then what are we doing? Just, you know, watch a comedy. Tom Segura's new live is.
I heard that.
Well, whatever it might be, you know, just surround yourself with people that are jolly and happy and fun and imbibe in life while we can. You know, let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy this ride, even though it's a rough ride right now. Let's enjoy this ride. Let's laugh through it. And let's have fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, Leaf, I want to say real quick, when you brought up that we almost need to rely right now on outside people doing good things to help fight with the supplies issue for our healthcare system. I just found out today that my mom, our local McLaren, had sent out kind of an SOS for supplies, and my mom is literally sewing masks right now to. She's got like 2 days to kind of like get as many as she can, and then they're gonna like drop those off. So quick shout out to Mom. You're one of those local heroes, and I'm sure there's countless others all over the place that are doing that same thing. It's sad that we would need to rely on people like that to help out in a situation, but they are heroes nonetheless, and they're helping. So
it is. It's good to see. So it's good to also see you guys. I'm glad we did this. And if you have watched this video or you tuned in, you're still here. If you have enjoyed our conversation, what we do moving forward from here will be based on what you guys say. So feel free to leave us a comment somewhere down there whenever we actually get this posted up, wherever that is. And we'd love to hear back from you. We'd love to hear what you guys want to hear us talk about, all that good stuff. So until later, Phil, Ryan, thank you so much. And I love you guys. Anyone watching, I love you as well. Stay strong. And remember, this won't last forever.
Right.